As Mysuru evolves into a tech and innovation hub, one big question that stands out: how do we build an ecosystem that attracts both investments and great talent? Not just coders and engineers, but creators, thinkers, and entrepreneurs. This Fireside Chat titled The Talent Magnet Building Ecosystem That Attracts Capital and Creativity brings together two people who've been working closely with talent in very real and on-the-ground ways. Please welcome Ms. Neeti Sharma, CEO of TeamLease. Ms. Sharma, who spent years in building bridges between learning and employability, making sure people don't just study, they grow into careers. Aisshwarya TKS Hegde, Secretary of NEF, whose work in Mysuru's education landscape is helping young minds prepare for what's next with the right skills and support. And guiding this conversation is someone who knows Mysuru ecosystem deeply, Mr. Sudheer Shankar, head Mysuru Cluster KDEM, and someone who's been connecting the dots between industry, academia, and policy. Over to you, Sudheer.
Why we have to do talent and position a city, a town, a taluk as a talent magnet for an area. So that is the background of today's discussion. And Aisshwarya, you come from the academic industry, and especially somebody who is operating from beyond Bangalore regions like Ramnagar and Kanakpura. What has been your experience, especially when we are looking at achieving this kind of an aspiration? You know, it's all nice when we want to say that we want to create impact, we want to change the world, change the landscape at a taluk level. But do you really think this is optimistic, wishful thinking, or is there something that we should be very considered about?
Yeah. Firstly, thank you for inviting me. It's my first time in the Infosys campus. I've always heard about it, but never got to see it. Thanks to you for that. A very good evening to everyone present here. That's a wonderful question, Sudheer, that you asked me. But honestly, to answer to that, I don't think it's a choice. It's not a choice today to develop in our Tier 2, Tier 3 cities or bring in skill development. It's no choice. We have to do it. How do we do it is the question in front of us. And being in academics or being in institution running, whether it's schools or colleges over the last few years now, what I've realized that Tier 2, Tier 3 children don't lack talent. Talent is available everywhere. What they lack is a lot of visibility. Visibility in terms of exposure, right? It's not like in a city like Bangalore where they're continuously interacting with industry people or sitting in a cafe to see what business deals are happening, to understand what is the job iteration that's happening in the industry. The exposure is not that high. So what we need to give them is probably not talent, to nurture the talent in the right way by exposing them and showing them that visibility. There is also a problem of underconfidence that exists in these students, maybe because of the bias, the pressure of the society to say that yes, you don't come from a mainstream city. How do we remove that shadow out of their head? How do we bring in that mindset shift is the question in front of us. I honestly don't see a big gap in the skill difference because the hunger is more, the commitment is more, the value for the opportunity given is much more. And I'm not saying this on the top grounds. I have run government schools in Kanakpura, in various constituencies, where I see how much a student values what they're getting, much more than what the value is in Bangalore, right? Even with a few cities, our aim in education has been to stop migration for education to another part. Once the migration of education stops from a rural area to an urban area, then the ecosystem starts falling in place, is what I believe as an academician or an educationalist, as people call me. So which is why we're trying to see how to strengthen schooling so high, even at a rural level, which I think our government is also looking at in a very strong way. So when your basic primary to middle school education is very high, the confidence in you grows, and then you have a good confident individual into a higher education, that automatically improves. But I know it's very hard and also very costly to wait for the next 10 years to develop our pre-primary, then go to secondary, then come to high school. So we have to do bridge gapping somewhere. My biggest way to do the bridge gapping would be creating personality development classes than technical development classes for a lot of these individuals, where they start believing in their personality and a confidence builds in them that yes, they can. And I must also say that we are in a beautiful era of education today, where it's not about answering the questions. Today, AI has brought us to education where it's all about asking the right question and analyzing what you have, right? Before, it was not just thinking, it was also doing what you're thinking. But things have changed now. So considering this era, I think it is possible of what we are envisioning much faster than what was happening till yesterday. So bringing in the bridging of talent, making students not to have the fear to ask the right questions even on their mobile phone is what we should start moving towards. Today, even if you ask a young student in an engineering college, okay, what are you doing with ChatGPT today? They're probably saying they're writing their leave letters or trying to get their prompts of their project. But are they asking different questions which no one else has asked? Are they trying to think about solving a problem and not sustaining a problem? These are shifts that is required, and I don't think a lot of us are working on that. I have a lot of my corporate friends sitting down in front of me. My request to them is also, when you do training, before you take your people in, as much as it is important to build in a technical training, a cultural training is also equally important. Today, I'm sure all of us are facing a big problem of iteration. Stability is not there in good talent. Shift of talent is happening. Why? Because we've not worked on a lot in building the culture of the organization so strong that you have safe, open spaces to express yourself and tell them where your weaknesses are and how do you grow to your strengths. I don't think those opportunities are given enough in our industries today also, which also is the reason for the fear. So if we can relook at that and say it's not just a talent that matters, but it's also a personality of who's working in our institution matters. So let's look into that. I think we can bring in changes, and all our talent, even in the Tier 2, Tier 3 city, will beautifully fit in those places if we start putting in that effort. And definitely there is a huge role to play from our institution side also, which we are trying to do, I think. Recently, VTU has given us, in Karnataka, has given us a status where 8th semester and 7th semester students can be sent for full-time internship. It was not there till last year. Only autonomous institutions were allowed. Now even VTU institutions are allowed. Mysuru itself has about 18 engineering college, 40,000 graduates passing out every day. So out of the 40,000, even 4,000 get internship in their final year. They will be more equipped to take up a job. So opportunities are happening, things are changing. How much do we grab that opportunity and give it to the right person at the right time is the question in front of us.
I think great insights. I have to congratulate you. Especially, the mindset shift that you talk about on how we can look at creating spaces safe for employees to talk about their weaknesses with confidence and safety is, I think, something at the core of what we are looking at, a lack of confidence, and how do we address that. My question to you, Neeti, is, now while she spoke the core of the challenge that we have with the talent, while I totally agree, on the viewpoints, but do you feel that industry will be ready to take this extra step? Because for industry, it is all about my JD, my skill sets, when I can put this person on the job. Now, do you think the shift has to happen not just on the academic side, but is there something that the industry should also look at walking that extra step? What are your thoughts on that?
Thanks, Sudheer. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be a little biased on the industry side because that's what I'm representing today. There has always been this whole conversation about industry, academia not collaborating, thousands and thousands of youth looking for employment, but industry says, I don't get the right person, I don't get the right talent. This is not a problem today. This has been in existence forever. I think the gap is narrowing a little bit. And how, I'll tell you. To your question, is industry receptive? I would say absolutely yes. I think more often than not, industry is more than willing to take the first or the second step to prepare the workforce for their future requirement. Right? Like Aisshwarya indicated about apprenticeships or internships, as a nation, we have a total of about 500,000 internships or apprenticeships that are actually getting paid stipend, which is almost above minimum wages of each of the states. It's not a small number. Imagine 5 lakh kids learning on the job, earning while doing. And these need not be just the STEM graduates. There are lots of, let's say, commerce students, art students, science students, obviously, engineering students. If you just look at the spread, I think industry is more than willing to take the first step. Karnataka government actually has a great scheme where they are actually reimbursing organizations if they are willing to take apprentices or internships which are above the national average. I think it's a great move which also enables MSMEs and SMEs to open their doors, which has been a problem statement. So to your point, you mentioned industry mostly looks at JD and then let me get my right person. I think it's also about sustaining themselves. Right? How do they make their own money? And we are not talking of large, margins in India. We know the margins of each of the industries. We have to also sustain the business. So where do I get help from? If I get the right talent, can I handhold them? Right? Like she said, technically, I don't think we have a challenge. A challenge is fitment, behavior. If I talk about interns or students who are coming in today into the labor workforce, the first challenge that they face is, I will have to wake up early morning every day and go to office the same time. That's not a choice. I started my career, I don't want to tell you my age, but that was decades ago. But, that was a given. It was probably a given till 5 years ago before the pandemic hit us. Now it's not a given anymore. Right? Why should I have to get up and go, dress up and go to office? It's hygiene. Right? It's not a choice. We have to ensure that they learn these things. Now, these are things that we don't learn in schools. We don't learn in colleges. We actually learn when we hit the ground running and say, oh God, now every morning I have to battle now. We heard about the whole Bangalore, Mysuru traffic, beautiful city, Mysuru. Obviously, I think it's great to reach wherever in 5-10 minutes time. When I moved to Bangalore 20 years ago, I think Bangalore was like that. So I still think Bangalore is far better than many other cities in the country. But I think that's the given. We have to make the students aware that these are the basic requirements. Industry is more than willing to do it. I don't see a challenge. Like I called out, apprenticeship, internship schemes are there. States are reimbursing organizations. I think so. That's the first step, right? But having said that, even without the internship and the apprenticeship programs that people kind of enroll for, most first jobs are our learn on the job sort of a thing. Because we all learn, we all figure out what needs to be done, what need not be done. We do take a lot of freshers in our jobs. Let's say at my organization, we give about 15 to 20,000 kids jobs every month. Okay, it's a high volume. I would guarantee you 50% of them are first-time job seekers. But that first-time job is their learning, is the way they have to build their career. But obviously a lot of awareness, hand-holding, opportunities have to be given to students in the tier 2, tier 3 cities. You mentioned about Bangalore, being formed 30 years ago. I think some data crunching that we were doing, about 10% of Bangalore workforce is from Mysuru district.
13%.
13%, okay. So if you are able to give the same opportunity within their district, not everyone will be wanting to migrate to Bangalore. A lot of people have migrated to other larger cities because the amount of opportunities in their home districts have been lesser. All of us will be very happy staying in Mysuru, working in Mysuru, even at the, if you're talking about 40 hours, 50 hours, 60 hours of work, I don't think anyone is running away from that. I think the challenge is how do I survive and sustain myself for growth in the future. Industry is, I think, equally invested, and we heard even the secretary mention this, the kind of collaboration we see in the state. I think we've seen that, pretty well, and that is growing immensely. If we are able to bring in industries from Mysuru cluster and maybe other clusters, MSMEs, SMEs, and enable them to also handhold work with academia, I don't see it's going to be very difficult in the future. The gap will remain. I don't think we'll ever reach a idyllic situation. But fair, that's what institutions are for, and that's what industry is for. We have to just learn how to collaborate and work with each other.
Also, to add to ma'am's point, I think few years ago, as an institution, our demand to supply was met. And as an industry, our demand to supply was more than it was met, right? It's only now that the crisis have come in where the industry is also suffering with bad talent, and our institutions are also suffering with bad placements, right? So today, there is a need where both of them have to align. If not, each of them will have a big disadvantage with each other.
I'll just add to what she's saying, okay? She mentioned...
I'm being very honest, even though a lot of my friends...
No, I'm just adding to what you're saying. You mentioned bad talent, okay? Actually, it's about where I place the person, what they want to do and what skill sets they bring in. As against, there is a job, let me place that person there, right? And that's where the whole attrition challenges and all those things kick in.
The fitment challenge.
The fitment is the most important thing in anything that we do. Now, obviously, as institutions, placement officers have a great pressure in placing the students. Industry wants to take somebody, so saying, chalo, let's take them. But at some point, we have to stop that and say, I'll do the right alignment, get the right person for the right job. We see success when we actually do that science and maths before we take the person in.
Yeah. This is where I come to the next point of discussion. When we start talking about fitment, generally, for us being, in Mysuru, close to Bangalore, we have two challenges. One challenge is we are close to Bangalore. The second challenge is we are close to Bangalore. So being close to Bangalore is that, we can always convince somebody to come to Mysuru. The second challenge is how do we make sure that people from Mysuru are not going to Bangalore. So, on the contrary, from a cultural point of view as well, when somebody looks at comparing Bangalore, it's a uneven comparison, unfair comparison. So when we are talking about creating ecosystems where none exists, I feel there is a benchmarking that we need to do where there is an apple-to-apple comparison. So now when we are talking about creating an ecosystem in, say, Kanakpura, Chamarajanagar, Hasan, Sakleshpur, the entire cultural fitment, like the skill fitment that we were talking about, do you feel that we should be also, like we train employees on job culture, should we also start looking at orienting companies about local culture? So, because I think it's a colonial hangover where we still feel that, we have to adjust everything, compromise, sacrifice everything. My festivals are, okay, I can adjust that. While the same thing may not work in France or the same thing may not work in US, where they stand up and say, okay, sorry, this is my national holiday. So, do you feel that if we have to make this initiative success, where we have to bring companies, should we also have an orientation program where we tell that, okay, the local Marama Jatra is very important. You need to be sensitive about the local culture. The car festival that happens is equally important. So now you need to map your calendar of, your company being sensitive to the local cultures. So this cultural fitment of the employer, do you see that it's going to be resistive, or will the companies be open to the idea of exploring at least a couple of them?
Yeah. So let me give you an example, or take an example of GCCs. We've been talking about it since morning. And Bangalore has the highest, or Karnataka state has the highest number of GCCs in the country. When they're setting in the first office in India, the understanding is whatever I'm doing in my country will be able to replicate in India. When we start talking to them and tell them, saying, hey, it's not going to work. There are certain things that may matter more to people locally as against what would probably matter to you. So I think that alignment and that awareness is very important, both ways. Because while we are saying that here the car festival is very important, but when, let's say we heard about new GCCs being set up in Mysuru, for the candidates, for the students or the job applicants who are looking for jobs in these GCCs, it will be equally important for them to understand what's important for the parent organization in the parent country where they come from. So I think it is a two-way process. We will have to obviously align the organizations, but we'll also have to align the job seeker. You know, and why are they coming to India? They're coming to India because they're getting good talent, high value, at probably a slightly lower rate. It's not as low as what it used to be 2 decades ago, but the value and the volume of talent we bring, you know, in India and in Karnataka is obviously much higher than other countries. That's the reason why GCCs, GBSs, ODCs are being set up in India. So what is it that we can offer to them as, you know, as employers, and you know, and the kind of employees we bring to the table is alignment and fitment to their culture. And of course, the organizations have to necessarily align to the sensitivities of the local culture and, you know, the holidays and all of those things. Yes.
I think it's mandatory for these global organizations to localize themselves. Why do I say this? Not even a global product works well, and in Indian context, if it's not Indianized to India, right? Name the best products that have come from around the world. Each one has had a different packaging for India. Each one has had a different taste for India. Each one has had a cultural change when they came to India. Whether it's Pepsi, whether it's Coke, whether it's KFC, whether it's McDonald's, you name the big brands of the world. So when they are doing it, obviously there is a reason for it. So as a consumer, when you're doing it, here it's not just a consumer analysis. You're not coming here only to, you know, make sure your consumer feels happy. Our people are equally part of the ecosystem as you create that system, no? So understanding and respecting this culture is a huge part of a success of a company, is what I understand. And I feel we have to be sensitive, we have to be adoptive, we have to see what these cultural changes in these local areas make a difference to people's life, because at the end of the day, we're humans. And humans have a certain way of familiarity that helps them to accelerate their work faster, right? There might be surprises here by then, but familiarity is that's going to keep them moving. But if you're not going to give that familiarity to them, then their attraction or their commitment to your job starts reducing. Forget anything else. I think it's human psychology also, right? Whether it's humans abroad, whether it's humans in India, we all have a certain type of way. That is missing. And I think just because when you move from one country to another, India is also equally global. But why are we biased and looked at as an inferior to come here is the question, because their demands have been fulfilled only by us. If they could find talent somewhere else, why would they come here? So I think we look at companies like this more as a treasure, and ourselves as where we don't have the treasure, where we have a lot of expectation gaps also on each side. So like ma'am said, yes, there is adaptability changes that have to happen from both sides. There is also expectation mapping that we'll have to do from both ends. The end of the company as well as the employee's perspective also, which I think we fail to do. In fact, even a prominent time or a prominent session is not involved in companies today when I sit in few meetings to see how this cultural mapping is happening. But a lot of expectation is thrown on in form of JDs. Also, I want to say it's not an era where you give a JD to a person and the person should follow the JD, right? You're expecting much more than that. Today, you want employees where you don't want to tell them what to do, but they have to come to you and say, maybe this is what has to be done. This is the expectation of all of us employers sitting on the other side, right? We promote a guy who's coming and telling us what to do rather than promoting a guy who's just doing what has been done. So when the expectation is that way, you might as well create an ecosystem where entrepreneurship, industry and academia work together. Entrepreneurship need not be just about some person who's running their own business. You need an entrepreneurial mindset even in an employee today if they have to start taking ownership of the company that they belong to and add value to the company. Have we thought about things like this? Yes, we have thought, but maybe not given it as much as importance that it requires, because I think it's a heart and soul of a driving company, and only with that such an ecosystem can be created.
Sorry, I'll just put in a word of caution here to what you mentioned, Sudheer. While yes, localization, adaptability, sensitivity is very important, let's also understand that the large part of GCCs who would have probably set up their first centers in Eastern Europe are now moving to India, purely because they realized that what they were looking for in East Europe is not beneficial for them because they didn't want to change the way of work. So I think we have to also look at how do we align on both sides, right? We don't want to be missing the bus for sure. This is a good wave to ride at the moment. But understand what the customer also expects, the client also expects, but also understand where we are actually hiring and their sensitive areas, I think.
I think as Aisshwarya had initially said, how do we create these spaces where we have confidence to talk with a safe environment about our limitations, either as an employee or as an employer, saying that, okay, this is something which is a non-negotiable for me. However, okay, let's talk on how do we figure out it together.
Also, I want to say that when a JD is given, you're only giving them what has to be done. You're not showing them the big picture. I think this is also lacking in a lot of our places, right? When you take someone, I want you to tell as corporates on what is your big agenda and tell them how important they play a part to this big agenda, right? You can't say just finish this assignment, finish this database, let's finish this client. By finishing this client, what is the output? So we all want to be a part of a big vision, a big mission. But when we don't know and the company doesn't involve us into the final outcome of why they're doing this, which I think is happening, when I see friends, when I see my students, when I ask them what is your company's vision, they don't know. Okay, I know it is equally their responsibility to know about it, but I think it is also our responsibility of us to make them a part of a big picture. Maybe first day you tell them, okay, as Infosys, I'm solving such a big problem. Then every day when they do the work, they'll say, yes, I'm contributing that one little drop to that big problem. Motivation drives in. So showing them the big picture is also mandatory, according to me. Like why do people finish college? Is because the bigger picture is they finally get a degree and maybe get a job. They're not studying first year just to pass first year. They're keeping the fourth year in mind to study that first year, right? But are we showing what is your fourth year success as you get into your job role as a first year success to anyone?
Or the fourth year hike.
Or the whatever you would like it. But yeah, that's something that's missing, I think.
Yeah, and I think aspirations are different for each one of us. Motivation, differs as well. What would be motivating for me may not be motivating for her or for you. So as employers, you have to also identify what works best for me. And she's absolutely right. If we don't show the long-term roadmap to our team members, then they're just doing that one day at a time. Right? We want them to look at the long-term view.
Now, before we conclude, one from an operational point of view. Now, let's say there are 5 companies who are ready to bite the bullet, take the first step, take the leap of faith. What would you see as an operational challenge to house them in academic institutions? Is the business environment conducive enough? Are we to look at a policy rejig or a realignment? Or do you really feel the education industry or the ecosystem of education industry is ready to host them in their campus?
I don't know if it's the readiness only of the institution. Like I run an engineering college myself. I have a lot of companies coming in trying to work part-time. I'm trying to create excellence centers with various companies. We've created labs. But what I see is, yes, education institutes have become much more flexible in the way of their working in order to accommodate this. But we also expect some kind of flexibility from the corporate side also, right? When companies came to me, I will not name the companies, but they said that 9 students. I will not take the 12th one. But what if 2 more people are interested because we've given the campus? Can't they come in? That flexibility and to help us map the talent is also very important. Today, when companies come to me, I'm speaking to a number of companies as I speak to you today, they tell me saying that Aisshwarya, so many hours of work is given for internship, but so many hours of work you have to just leave it to us and not allow anyone else to do it. The fact that you're a part of my ecosystem means we get to know what is good and bad within our ecosystem. Obviously, sit down to see what is our advantage on both sides and play to that advantage, right? Rigidity is the biggest factor with which such things are not happening. Otherwise, I think as an institution, it's much easier to spend lakhs of rupees on placement training. Instead, get an industry there and show your student that this is your future. So start working towards it. It's definitely financially more viable. if you ask me. Right? Because we are spending. If you see a institution today, the cost of placement training is only getting higher day by day, but the result and the outcome of that placement training is not happening. So I think this is a good way to do it by having contracts with companies of 4 years. From the first year, train those students only for that company. Get in that cohort of students and say, you will be in the future in this company. Look at the vision of that company and start having pockets like this in the institution. Should work. At least you know where you're getting to. You know where your investment is. You know if you're doing a project, it's helping a company. But I don't want to say this, but we also have a lot of lack in the mindset of the academicians and people running the academicians also in exposing what is not going right in their institution out, which is a big threat to a lot of us.
Not everybody will be as fair as you in terms of telling what exactly is not going right.
I know, but somewhere we have to come up a balance. I also feel government intervention into something like this will help, because when today government is setting us the amount of fee at which these graduates have to be taught, they should also set the standards in which a minimum of 2-3 incubation centers of different industries should be kept, so that that quality of return to investment for that educator or that student happens. I don't think it can happen just at a private level, because today I might say yes, next one going into an institution might say no. But also a mapping should be done of the available infrastructure of each of these institutions, because I know a lot of institutions are suffering without classrooms. But there are institutions which has acres of land but don't know what to do with it. So mandatory rules and regulations on why a certain area should be given, or before you give your UGCSE status or your autonomous status next year, if this can be put in the NAC and the NBA accreditation of a lot of institutions, if the industry can work together and work with an agency like that, it is possible. But it's possible as a rule and not by a choice.
No, I think it's a very valid point. Probably, something, if it is slapped as a rule, may not really be followed. But if we can look at cultivating that as a best practice, industry best practice, people will follow by willingness, by choice, rather than by force. So
we need a lot of small cohorts which have worked very well. So the moment, say my college, Global Academy of Technology, tomorrow I open an industry and I make sure 90% of my FCD students are placed very well, I'm sure the next college next to me is going to see what are you doing and call the same company or call another company and do it. You just need a few successful stories to come out.
Yeah, that's exactly where we are looking up to. So we will look up to setting up this first model, or a hypothesis validation kind of a exercise, and probably take it forward, and probably by next year Big Tech Show will have a lot more to talk about it. So I sincerely thank both of you for sparing time and having a wonderful conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed the discussion. I'm pretty sure the inputs that we have received today, we will work to make it materialize in the form of an actionable report in days to come, and a policy outcome as well, and probably could look at doing a demo unit somewhere. So thank you, Neeta, as well as Aisshwarya, for joining. Thank you very much, and I hand it over to Vakya.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Dear panelists, thank you so much for being part of this panel. We request you to stay back. Sudheer, if you can present the mementos to the panelists. We also request Mr. Shashi Kumar to come up on the stage to present memento to Sudheer. Thank you, dear panelists.